all you hardcore boxing fans out there, how are you doing? It's Russ here from Porky's Corner, the voice of hardcore boxing. We say the things that nobody dare say. I hope I've got everybody's attention, especially all you laminate holders from the Board of Control. Today I'm joined by Julian McGowan from Dewsbury. How are you doing, Julian?
All good, mate. I've had the week off work, so it's been nice to not do a lot this week and just take it a little bit easier than usual. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm all right, mate. I'm all right. I'm plodding on as you do. Plodding on. I've got a couple of things I've jotted down, Julian. I just want us to go balls deep. Big Meech, aka Anthony Joshua versus USYK. There's a few people in the industry. They're now saying that it might not happen. What do you think? Do you think that the people talking about this Russian-Ukraine war and Joshua's training situation, that they should have named the trainer 23 days ago? We were told it was going to be a week on Tuesday. Well, it's now 23 days. They've not named the trainer. USYK's team are like, what's going on? Joshua's quiet. Eddie keeps moving dates and moving goalposts. Is it going to happen? And if it does happen, will he be tucked at the ring, kicking and screaming?
It's an interesting one, Russell, because you just said that Joshua's quiet. So as you know, I don't spend a lot of time on social media now. Just if anything, just YouTube.
Yeah.
But I've not heard anything from Joshua. You know, he often release statements. He do little videos. I've seen nothing of Joshua for a while. I'm not suggesting that I go looking for him, by the way, but he's a big name. He pops up in my metadata.
Yeah.
I mean, that in itself is interesting. You know, I've said previously before, reluctantly, I'll give him a pass. But I think the frustrating thing for me, okay, is USYK beat him. Okay, he's got the belts and he beat him. But he's having to put his career on hold and to wait and see what Anthony Joshua decides to do. So when did this happen in boxing? That we had a fighter who just lost his belt, is effectively a contender. That's what Anthony Joshua is right now, is a contender. When did this happen in boxing that the contender could put the champion on notice and just say, you got to sit there and wait. No fights in between. I'm going to let you know when I'm ready and if I'm ready to take a rematch. He definitely doesn't favour it. It's not in his best interests. It might be in his best interest to hope that USYK's preoccupied with everything that's going on right now in the world. And, you know, a little bit like Leonard did with Duran, and try and catch him out maybe, and, you know, suddenly nail down a date in a venue, you know, waiting for the whispers from USYK's, the people who know USYK, etc., to say he's not in the gym that much, he's carrying a bit of weight. Maybe he's waiting for that, but he doesn't fancy it. The fight's all wrong for him. And as I said before, Russell, even if he managed to get, revenge in that rematch, it's going to happen again at some point. Someone's going to turn him over. Ultimately, we've seen laid bare several times now, not twice with the defeats, but several times we've seen the fragilities and the lack of the lack of the toolkit with Anthony Joshua. Yeah. And there's no way Anthony Joshua is going to dominate heavyweight boxing. He never really did, and he'll certainly never dominate heavyweight boxing again. So in short, that the rematch doesn't happen, Russell.
Well, they activated the rematch on October the 8th, and there's a few people in the industry that they ring me up and they say, well, I don't think this is going to happen because of this and that. And, you know, obviously I weigh it all up before I come on here and that. And yeah, personally, they look frightened to death. I think they're going to try and get USYK to have another fight and hope that he stumbles or injured. They're looking for a way out now, and USYK's got to sit firm, hasn't he? But Joshua, he wants to save face, doesn't he? He wants to step aside. He looks stupid there. Now he's got to fight USYK. If he doesn't fight USYK now, and USYK goes on and has another fight or another defense, anything could happen, and it could get lost, this rematch, couldn't it? And I think personally, looking for a way out. That's what I think.
Well, there must be a window, a little bit like with Fury and Wilder, the third fight. There's got to be a window once you activate that rematch clause before that fight gets announced or before that fight takes place. You can't have a rematch indefinitely, can you?
No.
And then that let's just say we're going to decide to do it in 2 years' time, there's got to be something underwritten and caveats in that contract that says it takes place by this point, etc. So as soon as he activated that, I would assume there'd be a date built in. And if there isn't, then they're not very smart lawyers surrounding these guys. But that for me, just it's massively frustrating again, which is why I'm glad that hopefully Fury and
White,
his name went then, wouldn't you? Hopefully Fury, because you get that bored of talking about them all not fighting, you forget who's who, don't you? Hopefully Fury and White happens, because ultimately Joshua is looking at more inactivity, and they're just keeping the belts on ice, and it just doesn't seem right to me. Make your intentions clear. I want the rematch. I want it during this period or not. They were talking about April, but it's not going to be April now, is it?
no.
So you either want it or you don't. And if you don't want it, let Alexander Usyk carry on with his career.
Well, we're March next week, aren't we? And they activated it October 8th. It's going on forever, isn't it?
It's just ridiculous, and it just shows how contracts have basically taken over the sport, haven't they? These contracts that they're all signing and they're all doing have taken over the sport. I don't know the details of the Fury and White contract, but I was walking the dog this morning. I was thinking about coming on here, and I'm thinking, I wonder if there's a rematch clause in the Fury and White contract. And I thought, God, I hope not. Come on, is this where we're going now? So I hope there's not a rematch clause built into that one, because we're going to see the same faces for facing each other and delaying it and etc. etc. And then, like we've said before, you've got the Joe Joyces of this world. They're just sat on the sidelines, and they're going to be old men by the time they get the shot.
What happened to all roads led to Undisputed?
I think we're going to get even more fragmented than anything at the point now, aren't they? I mean, you know what I'm like with belts. Belts don't mean they mean a hell of a lot more to the fighters and the fans than they do to me. They don't mean anything to me. I couldn't tell you half these champions who they are and who they care. So I'm not exactly sure what belts Usyk has got, and I genuinely mean that. I know he hasn't got the WBC, but I don't know what belts he's got. But at some point, those organizations are going to start to mandate their own fighters, and it's just going to fracture again. Yeah. And it'll actually be impossible to do the unification. And we've said before, promoters are to blame, the way the structure is to blame, but fighters are to blame ultimately. Yeah.
Okay. Do you feel that obviously Joshua, they tried to get that step aside, they activated it, then they activated rematch, then they went for step aside, they were in negotiations for weeks, and he's tried out 7 different trainers. We've still not had a trainer named. There's no step aside. There's no date for Usyk rematch. It's all pointing to the fact that Big Meech looks like he's filling his nappy.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? Because you have to ultimately get to that assumption, don't you? You push everything out to one side and you say, this fight has not happened yet. Why not? And this because either Joshua has not found the coach he's looking for, which would be better actually finding the Wizard of Oz, wouldn't it, to give him certain tools, like Fury said himself. So he's either not found the right coach, he's not found the confidence, to your word, he's not found the balls to actually go and do this. But what Joshua's not realizing is there's 2 things. One, everybody knows Tyson Fury is heavyweight champion of the world, and that's continuing. He's got his second defense.
He's the main man, isn't he? He's the main man.
Fury's the main man. He's the one people talking about. But the second thing what's happening for me is Joshua doesn't realize people are losing respect, interest in the Anthony Joshua story. Unless you're a real diehard Anthony Joshua fan, you get to a stage like you and I, you just move on. You're like, oh, look, it's a fractured belt. You don't want the rematch. Who cares what you're doing? Guess what? I'm just going to focus on the other fighters who actually want to fight. And I always liked Joshua, early on, and I kind of liked how he presented himself. Not perfect, people make mistakes, but I kind of liked him. And then you start to see the same tired patterns go through the career, and the caution and the calculated risks, etc. You see his limitations, but I also get frustrated why he's always looking for a technical reason when he gets beat, whether he had the wrong coach, he had the wrong game plan, he approached it wrong. preparation wasn't right, etc., etc. He's never actually owning the fact that he's getting beat because he's got so many shortcomings for so-called, elite heavyweight. It's quite embarrassing, actually. Some of the things I look at as a coach, I look at the things he can't do. What he does very well. But some of the things he can't do, I just cringe.
Yeah.
I was watching, I've mentioned this before, when there's a little video of Floyd Mayweather watching Joshua do some shadowboxing. And he's throwing his right hand like a white collar novice. He's throwing it from his chest and his chin's in the air. And I'm thinking, a penny for them. I wonder what Floyd Mayweather really thought when he was watching him shadowboxing. Because I'm going, wow, you actually. I think Frank Bruno had more technique in his early days in the 80s. It was embarrassing, really.
Floyd Mayweather would have looked at Big Meech, aka Joshua, and would have thought Tyson Fury's right. Big stiff dosser.
Yeah, it's harsh. You and I say things differently, but I'm nodding as you're saying it. I'm not disagreeing with you. I just choose different words to say it. But there's the more that time goes on, and yeah, we gave about the gold medal and two-time world champion, etc. If you know as well as I do, if Anthony Joshua, okay, I'm time hopping again. If Anthony Joshua was even a heavyweight when we did have fractured belts in the 90s, when we had, Lennox and Holyfield and Tyson, etc. And then the 80s, he wouldn't have got a look in. He might not have even fought for a world title during that period. He wouldn't have got a look in. So he's very fortunate that we're in a
poor era.
Yeah, it's a poor era. We've got some exciting names and exciting fights. Fury's given us some absolute thrillers, but it is a poor era, and the talent pool is not that great. And when you roll out off your tongue, the top 5 or 6 heavyweights, never mind what Adam Smith was saying, about how boxing's on fire again, the heavyweight division's brilliant. It's not really.
Fights are happening in heavyweight division. Fury's not fighting. Joshua's not fighting. Wilder's not fighting. Who is fighting? Joyce is not fighting. Dubois not fighting. Dave Allen ain't even fighting. Who's fighting in the heavyweight division, Adam? Stop telling whoppers, you whopper.
Well, nobody's fighting, and that's the thing. And I look at, Daniel Dubois, and that is a guy who needs rounds. He needs rounds. He shouldn't be fighting for the money he's earning and making a big deal out of it. Daniel Dubois should be knocking over bodies for the next 3 years. He should be fighting every 4 weeks, every 6 weeks.
Yeah.
It's just, you've even got, like I say, you've even got the novices. He's a novice to me. You've got the novices and the really inexperienced fringe contenders who aren't even fighting. Hrgovic comes out. He's not, what's he had, 7, 8 fights? He's not fighting that often.
I think he's about 13, 14 and 0, something like that.
That's what he is. But I know I'm going back, and not every fighter does this, but remember Nigel Bent's first year, he fought about 20 times in his career, just battered everybody. Mike Tyson had, he had like 18 months, he had 20 odd fights or something. It didn't matter who was fighting, it was just getting experience to different styles and to the occasion. And people were fighting regular. And as I've just said, you've got the likes of Daniel Dubois. You get a big announcement, his next fight is this. I'd put him in with anybody. I'd put him in with absolutely anybody and just keep him busy. But they're not learning the craft, and this is the problem you've got now. And Joshua ain't going to learn his craft in rematches against elite heavyweights. He should be learning his craft, doing what he should have done years ago, which was having learning fights. But the times have moved on. So what we're seeing now, Russell, is fighters massively exposed.
Yeah,
fighters propelled too quickly. So we're seeing a real gap between the cream of the division and everybody else, and fighters are getting really, really exposed.
Okay, we'll move on to Bricktop. Frank Warren, he's just won another purse bid, hasn't he? Andrade against Zach Parker. He's beat Eddie Hearn on purse bid. Eddie Hearn's, where's his billions that he had? What it going to be? Game change. Hashtag game change. Hashtag the takeover. Well, what's going on?
Game changed. Yeah, you wonder if there's owner really limiting the budget. And I mean, this is, we've talked about this before, but this is how, I work for a business, as I said before, we're owned by an investment banking company, just like DAZN. So your investors will speculate early on. You know, do some cleansing, they'll do some streamlining, and then they speculate early on. And then you get to a point, you know, your second financial year, your third financial year, they want to see the return, they want to see the reward. Now, Eddie's not giving them that, is he? I know there's a platform in the US, but this was about also breaking ground in the UK. Yeah. We don't know how many subscribers in the UK DAZN has got. And it's interesting. I chat to various people and they say, everyone's tightening the belts right now. So all our energy prices are going through the ceiling, aren't they? Mm-hmm. Everything, food, everything's going through the ceiling. So me personally, as I look at, and I'm not crying the poor tale, I never do that. As I look at Sky and Netflix and DAZN, which is £9, you say, what can I shake off? And I can't remember the last decent fight I saw on DAZN. I've lost a bit of interest in terms of what the fights are anyway. I find it a little bit annoying to sign in, etc. So I'm looking at shedding it off. And I think a lot of people are doing that. And I think that's reflective in the purse bids that Eddie's effectively doing, because we're not seeing the numbers and we're not seeing the subscriptions. And they'll give him a budget now. They'll give him a limit. He doesn't have a bottomless pit to bid whatever he wants. He has to justify that purchase to the paymasters. And the numbers won't add up. And Frank, again, has hammered him. You know, he's delivered a decent fight. And you wonder how many more of these he can take. I mean, I'm not saying he's down on one knee, but he's definitely on the ropes. He's hurt. And back to your point about having adversity and having resilience, he's never shown that. So we're going to find out right now, aren't we? But
relentless. He had his book, Relentless.
Yeah, but what we're not doing now is what we had previously when he started his foray into boxing in the 10, 15 years ago, whenever it was. Now he's not working with daddy's money and Matchroom's money. He's now having to work with other people's money. And they don't give a shit about what he's done previously, about, it's like, you know, private equity. They don't care about what you're going to bring or what you say you're going to bring or what's in the pipeline. None of that matters. It's like, what have you delivered so far? And what are you going to guarantee me you can deliver in the next 6 months? And right now, I'm not seeing a massive amount.
Well, what you have to remember is this. When you were at Sky, Eddie, what happens is at the beginning of the year, they give you £3 million per year. Got 20 shows there. So Eddie, the shrewd accountant son that he is, will look at it like, I'm going to keep that £3 million for myself and my daddy. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to sell the hell out of these shows on every platform and talk non-stop, like Michael Caine did in the 60s. He made all them films. Eventually, they made that one with Minis where they went to
the Italian Job.
Eventually, he got lucky, didn't he? But it's a bit like Danny Dyer, wasn't he? He did all them films and then they did The Business, and that was good, wasn't it? Eddie's a bit like that. He drowned everybody out and sold the hell out of the shows, and everybody got on board. And what they try and do, 20 shows, £3 million. It's like 150 grand a show. The promoters, they try and keep that money. And the tickets that they bring in and sponsorship and commercial and people helping out and blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. They try and pay everybody off that, and they try and part with as little of the TV money as they can. Sometimes they might have to dip into it 20, 30, or maybe 50 grand, but that's their guaranteed wage. If they can leave that to one side and use the ticket money and the commercial stuff and sponsorship and everything else, they're on a winner. They might even make a profit on that as well as the TV money, but they try not to part with the TV money. A couple of times it didn't work out for him. I remember Darren Barker fighting for the European title. He didn't do any tickets, and Eddie did his conkers on show. He ended up losing money. That's just the nature of the beast. They want to come and put some shows on around here. I mean, Dennis is losing money hand over fist. Get your hand in your pocket, but when you're using other people's money, it's like you've just said. They want to know the buck stops with Eddie, doesn't it? Now, Eddie's had a good do out of them all, because at first he were throwing a lot of DAZN money all over the place. People were getting paid massive amounts. People like Tommy Coyle, who's never won anything more than the Commonwealth, they were getting mega dough. Now, good luck to Tommy Coyle, but a Commonwealth level fighter. Do you know what I mean? Not a world level fighter, but he got a few quid out of the job. But Eddie were overpaying everybody. But if he's overpaying everybody on DAZN when it first started, he would overpaying himself because he was still taking his 20%, wasn't he? Plus whatever else he were giving on the side. Not that I'm saying Eddie had took out under the table, but it does go on, doesn't it?
Of course it does, yeah.
So, okay then. Well, let's monitor the situation with Eddie and DAZN. But personally, I think they're heading for Skid Row.
Absolutely, I can see a big crash with DAZN in the next 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, I can. Right, let's move on to the Amir Khan Kell Brook show. We'll start with Fraser Clark, an Olympian, bronze medal, big puncher. They got a man out of the crowd to fight him who was on basically Max's level. Our friend Max, who we all training and advising. They were basically on Max's level. Could you imagine if Max would have been in that crowd with us and he got asked, do you want to fight Fraser Clark? I would have said to him, no. You would have said no. Max might have said yes at right money. Could we end up with matchmaking like this with the body on the slab?
It's the easiest thing in the world. This is a dangerous sport, and you've got to look. You're never going to match people equally on the way up, but you've got a fighter like Fraser Clark who's had 100 international fights. You know, you see these elite amateurs now who have been in the WSB, etc., and you see them turning over, fighting really good opposition, kids who are, you know, 9-1, 9-2 and stuff, and you see this quite frequently because they've got the tools to perform at world level. They just haven't got the everything else to do it over 6, 8 or 10 rounds. So that's a really dangerous fight. That was a dangerous fight to take. I don't blame the kid who took the fight because he will have last minute job. He will have, you know, Clark will have sold a lot of tickets. He's popular. So that kid's done a lot of people a favour. So he'll have had him by the bollocks and he'll have got some good money. But money's no good to spend when you're eating through a straw, is it? And
no.
And that's the problem I've got. And I had this conversation with Max yesterday. I know you do. And I said, you've got to stay in your lane. Now, what should happen, in my opinion, is Fraser Clark it was a debut that a lot of people are looking forward to, and he can fight. No matter what people where people think he'll go or not, he can fight. He was one of the best amateurs in the world, as he proved in the Olympics. Now, for that kind of money, for that kind of profile, they should have somebody on standby. You know, it's not unusual, is it, Russell, to say you're fighting him, but you also have a word with another fighter and just say, just keep him training. Look, I'm going to bung you a couple of grand to keep him in the gym because I have a feeling this fight might not happen, and have a backup plan. So clearly they had no backup plan. You got to invest in somebody like Clark with a lot of money, and part of that investment should be a backup plan. I know in boxing, cancellations happen all the time. You talk about Dennis's shows, Steffi's shows, Mick Wales shows. They're changing the opponents on the day all the time. But this isn't sports centre stuff. This isn't low-level grassroots professional boxing. This is an Olympian, and you have to have a succession plan, and you have to have a framework in to make sure he's got credible opponents on his debut. And there's the visual thing as well, Russell, isn't there? It was clear his opponent, brave as he was, couldn't really fight. But then when you have somebody like Fraser Clark having a debut against somebody who's really out of shape as well, it doesn't say much. And what we saw was typical of an elite fighter against a journeyman or a novice, basically. And this is what I said to Max. I says, you could fight someone like Fraser Clark, and within a minute and a half, he wouldn't throw a punch and you'd be knackered. Just the things he would have you doing, just the shots and the way he'd be positioning his feet and pressing you and making you miss. Elite fighters can make people absolutely knackered just within the space of a minute.
USYK did it to Tony Bellew and Joshua, didn't he?
Yeah, just do not a lot of work, get you to do the work, give you that threat of intimidation and that threat of the counter for every small mistake you make, and just completely. And that's what we saw with that kid. He had got nervous energy. He was breathing heavy. He took a few little shots, but it's dangerous. And I saw your show yesterday with Max. What's going to happen is someone's going to get hurt, and people are just going to turn their heads away and say, he was fit, the doctor passed him, you know, he was in shape, he'd been in the gym, even though he was about 3 stone overweight. He'd been in the gym. Someone is going to get hurt. And I said this before, we all know boxing. Boxing's not a safe sport. Our job is to make it as safe as we can. And one of those ways to do that is to avoid these absolute blatant mismatches.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you, mate, wholeheartedly. Can a case be made for Olympians having to start off and be like Joe Joyce did, and like this USYK kid who's turning over? Can a case be made for those guys to be fighting at for a British title or British title eliminator in the first fight? You know, that kind of thing.
I think you could definitely accelerate them, Russell, no doubt, within 5 fights or something. I mean, Charlie Magri, you know, he went to the flyweight title really, really quickly. And I look at fighters like that, and we have to do something to move them along quickly, because it's not like before where, you know, you and I have talked about this, that we talked about the 84 Olympic squad, but those guys were turning over at 18 years old, 19 years old. Now what's happening is people are sometimes like Luke Campbell, they're hanging around for 2 Olympic Games. So the GB amateurs and the elite amateurs for 6, 7, 8 years as a senior, and that's a long time. And what's the point of Fraser Clark now fighting the same kind of opposition as Johnny Fisher? I mean, you got one who's an Olympian, one who's an absolute out-and-out novice former rugby player, and they're fighting the same type of opposition. It's a joke. Yeah, he should be fighting decent kids with winning records, and he should be able to, and no disrespect, Fraser Clark, if he fought Dave Allen tomorrow, I'd put my money on Fraser Clark.
Yeah. Do you know Fraser Clark's 3 years older than USYK?
And look at the difference in professional experience now. So he needs to be, it's pointless doing the apprenticeship. You know, we talked about this, the white collar guys turning over, or the novice pros, or the guys who didn't quite make it, the amateurs. They have to do that apprenticeship. They have to fight this lowly level of opposition. But the Fraser Clarks of this world, I mean, look at Lomachenko. I know not everybody can't compare everyone to Lomachenko, but Lomachenko didn't mess around fighting journeyman, did he? Straight into the elite level. The only difference between what he was doing was literally the 10 and 12 round distance. So I think there's something in that. We have to accelerate these kids.
Okay. We're not going to cover every fight on that show, because I wasn't that impressed with undercard, to be honest. But Natasha Jonas, people are saying that now she's a world champion, she can get a couple of good paydays and slip into a nice pundit job. They're saying she's one of the best pundits out there, and obviously the best female one, but she is one of the best pundits out of everybody. I'm really pleased for her, and another world champion for Joe Gallagher.
Absolutely thrilled. I really enjoyed Saturday night, and that was probably most of the reason why I enjoyed it. She rolled the dice. She stepped up several weight divisions, and even I raised an eyebrow and went, I thought about that. I thought, Joe's so clever. So he's seen something in what Natasha can do and what their opponent cannot do. And Joe said, look, you can win this fight. So I was absolutely thrilled for Natasha. She's a brilliant ambassador. She's been overlooked, let's be honest. She's been pushed to the side. She's come damn close in 2 world title fights. She's probably the nicest person in boxing. And I think it was brilliant for her. It was brilliant for Joe. I remember Natasha Jonas getting stopped really early on in her career and watching through my fingers and feeling so bad for her, thinking, wow, this girl's not going to make the grade. And it shows that unbeaten records mean nothing. Records are for DJs. And for me, from a technical point of view, the part I enjoyed about that fight was all we see with southpaws is the 1-2. We don't see the variety from a lot of elite southpaws right now that we see from orthodox fighters. And when I watch southpaws all the time, I keep thinking, why aren't southpaws throwing that, the left cross and that right hook after it? Because they'd have so much more success, like the real great southpaws used to do, like Whitaker, for example. And Jonas just threw that, what we call the 2-3. And it was beautiful. It was absolutely just majestic to watch that combination. And I thought, that's the punch that's so underrated from southpaws against orthodox fighters. They don't throw it because it's a danger shot, because they get caught with the left hook on the way in. But I loved watching it from a technical point of view. I loved watching her and Joe at the end. It was just brilliant watching them embrace, and you could see what it meant to them. And Does anybody deserve that more than Natasha Jonas? I don't think so.
Now, she was robbed against Terry Harper, and
Oh,
probably could say you could have made a case for a draw against Taylor, couldn't you?
yeah, it was. Yeah, it was like that. Yeah.
So well done to Natasha Jonas, and obviously they're earmarking a career for her in punditry because she's really, really good at she actually breaks everything down on that.
And as well, I mean this in a very polite way. She's beautiful as well, isn't
She's
she?
a nice looking lass as well, yeah.
She's a beautiful.
She
She's
ticks all
beautiful inside.
boxes.
Yeah, she's beautiful inside and she's beautiful outside. She's clearly a really good pundit. She'd be brilliant.
She's a lovely person. Yeah. Right then, the main event. Kell Brook and Amir Khan. Obviously, I had Khan round 6 by knockout. I didn't think Kell Brook's eyes was all up. I think Amir Khan didn't look brilliant. In fact, it looked shocking. Kell Brook didn't look brilliant either. His timing looked out. But Amir Khan made Kell Brook, in my opinion, Julian, look fantastic. But it was a 12-round fight, but he only went half at fight, didn't it? 6 rounds, but no world title on line. It's a Sky box office, and now Sky is saying they're considering. Amir Khan's considering his options over the next 21 days, whether he's going to activate the rematch. What are they going on about here? We want to see that again.
It's bizarre, really. We've seen some strange rematches in history, haven't we?
Is it another Hey Bellew, do you think? They're going to have to write a script out to sell us yet another pay-per-view with no world title?
It's bizarre. I was thinking, I always remember when Joe Calzaghe knocked out Mario Vita in the first round, and then subsequently he fought Vita again later on in his career, and I'm like, the mandated him, and it's like you just bang someone over in a round. That was Calzaghe at his best, but you just bang someone over in a round, you've got to have a rematch. Boxing sees really bizarre rematches. In terms of the fight and the prediction, I'm not going to give myself a high five for nailing it, because I said to you, it wasn't a confident pick. But for me, before I just move on to the rematch, that for me, the most worrying thing about that fight was clearly both fighters are past the best. You know, I've told you before, you know, when we have this conversation, I said about David Hay pushing his punches, about first sign of fighter's shot when he was pushing his punches like he's underwater. Now, 30 seconds, 40 seconds into that first round, I said to my son and Anna, and I said, Khan is absolutely shot to bits. He threw a combination, about 6-7 punches. He didn't land a punch. And it wasn't that Brook wasn't there to be hit. He just couldn't hit the target, and he was throwing his overhand right, really awkward. And I just turned around to my lad and Anna, and goes, he's pushing his punches. He's absolutely shot. I says, Brook's got this. You know, you can generally tell, can't you, straight away. And I says, Brook is going to nail him. Little doubt about that. Brook kept his composure. I was pleased overall with the result. I said before the build-up, I said, whilst I favour Brook, I think Khan at their absolute best would have beaten him. So effectively, it didn't prove much, did it? But the guy who uses his legs and speed is always the guy who's going to suffer in a fight like that, as far as I'm concerned. In terms of a rematch, the crazy thing about boxing, I mean, because Khan will say he's retired now. The crazy thing is, I'm not going to turn around and say that rematch is never going to happen. What a load of rubbish! Because we do know now that we get sold anything. We can get sold anything. You know, who knows what's going to come out? There might be did you actually know that Khan was injured and he twisted
intense beef? There might be some intense beef.
There'll be something. Well, there'll be something. I hope the fight doesn't happen. It's not for me to tell a man to retire. I would personally like to see them both walk away. That's just from a personal point of view. But as I said previously with Bellew, ultimately, if he gets 4 or 5 million on the table, Kell Brook's going to be retired for the rest of his life. So Kell Brook's not going to walk away from that kind of money. So good luck to him. But Amir Khan has got so much money now. And Amir, seriously, you were absolutely shot to pieces. You were gone. And I suspected it, actually, when I was watching some of the work he was doing with Bomac. And he was having him, I remember saying to you last week, he was having him sat down on his shots and he was turning the shot over a little bit more, and it was less rapid fire stuff. And what I also noticed was Khan was doing the double and triple jab. Every time I saw him train, he was doing a double and triple jab. And every time he threw the double and triple jab, Kell Brook literally just slipped to his right. He knew the right hand was coming, and he rode that right hand every single time. So not only was Khan shot to bits, it was massively predictable. I'm not 100% sure. People say, no, he showed a good chin. I think it was Brook's lack of youth and lack of brilliant time in that.
Lack of vigor to get him out there.
Yeah. A young Brook against that version of Khan would have got that. He'd have just put him on the slab, to quote you. So Khan, definitely walk away. Kell Brook, be nice to see you walk away, but ultimately, if you get offered a big cash grab, you take it and you stay healthy and you live the rest of your life healthy and happy, mate.
Yeah, we have to give Flex Ingle a bit of credit, because Kell Brook, like, he's a very technical fighter, isn't he? I've been saying it for ages and nobody's picked up on it. He does everything very good, doesn't he? He's like an 8 or 9 out of 10 on everything, isn't he?
Yeah, Kell Brook's very, very good. And Dom, and I've said this before, Dom's shrewd, and people write him off because his dad was the genius coach, and people write Dom off, and he's a good coach in his own right. I don't care what anybody says, but what he did was quite clever, actually. We kept seeing in the previews, we kept seeing Kell Brook switch. He was switching when he was stepping to his left, and when Khan stepped to his left, or his opponent stepped to his left and Brook went right, he switched, and he never switched in that fight. I think they're putting things in Khan's team's head as well to try and stop that mobility as well, even though the legs were kind of gone. By showing that cut off and that step off by switching, lefty to righty, I think they were playing mind games. And I've not spoken to Dom in a while, but I'm sure Dom was playing games there, and they'd got no intention of switching in that fight. But it's certainly, for me, it was part of the reason that Khan approached it like he did.
Right then, Amir Khan, I'm going to say should retire. Julian,
Done.
Yeah? Right, Kell Brook, we know he's not going to retire because there's money on the table. The back speaking with Eddie now, everybody all rosy with Eddie now and all that, and blah, de blah. Should Kell Brook fight Conor Benn, Crusher Ben, or Chris Eubank? Quithifer.
It's so difficult to answer because both of those fights I don't want to see. They're both big fights. They've both got huge names. So let's start with Eubank. Listen, Eubank would beat Brook, no doubt. Too big, too fast, too sharp, too youthful, too everything at this stage. Overall, pound for pound, Kell Brook's a way better fighter than Eubank. But at this stage, Eubank beats him all day long. Now, the reason I don't want to see Brook against Ben, whilst it'd be a brilliant payday for Brook, is, well, first of all, we've got Conor Benn, who says, I'm learning my craft and focus on world titles. And you're continuing to fight people we've heard of who are shot to bits. And this would be a very cynical match. And second of all, I just want to bite my fist, but I think Ben would probably beat Brook right now. It's a crossroads thing. I always think to, when Ray Leonard beat Hagler and they beat DeLonde, but then he fought Hearns again, Duran again. It was like Leonard was very, very shrewd, and he was fighting the guys who were a similar age to him, and it meant them more competitive. And then he made the mistake of fighting Terry Norris, didn't he, the young gun, and he got absolutely taken apart. And Leonard was my hero. And everything, you do not put guys at a certain stage in with young, aggressive punchers who are on the way up. It's a real bad recipe.
They don't respect you, do they?
No respect at all.
You saw what Nigel Benn did when he was a Commonwealth champion. He just lost it. He went to America, got him with Duran in his sparring, and he set about Duran, didn't he? I know that because Peter De Freitas told me. He said you were there. He set about Duran, and Duran were like, "Wow, people don't normally show it." He didn't show him any respect, did he? And Duran still went on to win world titles after that, didn't he?
Yeah, beat Aaron Barkley. Yeah, you're dead right though, because that's it. When they're young, they're fearless. Yeah. Even though we don't think Conor Benn's as good as he thinks he is yet, he might prove to be. By the way, he's not as good as he thinks he is yet. But it's about, does Brook really need someone who's lively and is going to set about him with that pace at this stage of his career.
Like Ben and Eubank would. And shame on Ben and Eubank for like wanting Khan and Brook and whatnot this last few months and that, and called, well, Ben's called Brook and Khan out, and Eubank's called Brook out. But shame on them. Why don't they fight somebody domestically? Why don't Eubank go fight somebody domestically? Do you know what I mean? Instead of just Liam Williams, why don't you fight somebody else, or Euro level? Why don't Conor Benn go fight Michael McKinson? Or
do you want to develop as a fighter? Do you want to be a true world champion? Or do you just want to get as much money and fame as you can? And we know what the answer is, because this is the generation and society that we live in. It's about having as much money and fame as they can get. So how do we do it? We always mention this: name association. Call out the people have heard of.
Yeah.
You know, is what we haven't heard Conor Benn call out Virgil Ortiz, because the UK crowd wouldn't have a clue who Virgil Ortiz is. We haven't, we don't hear Eubank call out Jamie Mungoa, for example, do we? Someone who'll be in his face for 12 hours. We never hear those.
Beefy Smith. He don't call out Beefy Smith, does he, Eubank?
He calls out the fighters who he knows he can beat and they're a safe bet.
Like De Gale and Arthur Abraham, Kel Brook, them sort of guys, shot guys who are absolutely faded, and it's a boring old recipe. But it's one thing to do that, but it's another thing then when Conor Benn actually is in with someone who's youthful and elite in their own right. We'll see what he's made of, won't we? But the one thing we will know he's made of is pound notes, because he'll be absolutely, whether he fails or not, he'll be so rich by the time he gets to a world title because of the course that is going on. I just find it tragic, and as you can see, and what was it, Dennis, who said to you previous about the landscape always changes, and that's the voice of experience, and that's the voice of wisdom. So we're going to start to see Eddie. I think we talk about Eddie being on the ropes. I think what Eddie will start to do now, he'll start to maybe reach out to other promoters. He'll try to work with other promoters or other fighters and do what he can now, because he's struggling. Although Brook's a free agent, of course, but I just think they're interesting times, Russell, but they're not exciting times in terms of what happens between the ropes. Yeah, exciting times ahead.
Yeah, we'll see.
Okay. Fury White. Does it happen? White signed the contract. I'm hearing reports that Derek Chisora is the standby guy if White pulls out. What do you think to that one?
I think it's quite ironic how if Chisora's the standby guy, how he's in that role for a start. That tells you what kind of level of ambition he's got. He's governed by pound notes. I mean, I don't know how you'd sell if
it won't be for a world title though. If it were Fury, they'd have to just put ring belt online, wouldn't they? If it were Chisora, get him in as a last minute. Yeah.
It'd have to be a knockabout job, wouldn't it?
It'd be a lot cheaper than White, wouldn't it? Because he don't bring notes at table, does he?
I think it happens. I think the fight, for whatever reason, has got injury written all over it. We might see a postponement.
They're going to try and do each other's heads in, pair of them, aren't they?
Yeah, of course they are. They're going to piss each other off. I said before, I think it happens. I think it's a decent fight. It's not a great fight. It's a decent fight, but if we hear the word COVID or got a hand injury or whatever, you just shake your head and you just wonder about it. And as for Chisora being a stand-in, I don't know if it's true or not, but I was there. Obviously, I told you that Gary boxed on the same bill when Chisora and Fury fought for the second time. I've never seen a man take a more one-sided beating. It was like Randall Tex Cobb against Larry Holmes, but at a slightly lower level. But Fury took a man's soul that night. Fury might be bloody responsible for the beating he put on him. Took some miles off Chisora's clock. So
he's had pay-per-views since then, Derek.
Yeah, he's had Julian, hasn't he? Well, yeah. The
pay-per-view, Julian.
Some of those are pay-per-views in, technically, but they're not in the McGowan household. I didn't pay for a bloody.
Well, Derek Chisora, since Fury battered him second time, He's had USYK pay-per-view, Dylan pay-per-view. No world titles online, by the way.
And who's he beat? Who's he beat?
Oh,
I can't remember.
Nobody really. Takam.
Yeah.
Beat
Yeah,
Takam, and
yeah.
they pulled the punch from gods, didn't
Yeah,
But,
nice shot. Taka was 96, yeah.
Yeah, if it happens, Fury White, who have you got winning?
Fury will stop him. It'll be a competitive fight. I'm going to make two predictions. One of them is that Fury beats White. And the second one is a bit of a wild card. I always try and put the coach's head on and Fury's head on. Fury's a very, very clever fighter. What's the best way to take away Dillian White's left hook? And I would think it'd be to box southpaw and to move clockwise to his left. I think you'll see Fury. My second prediction is you'll see Fury fighting the majority of that fight in a southpaw stance, which is what he did with Rogan, and he did that with Chisora, which we just talked about. And that's my second prediction: is he'll beat him up, and he'll beat him up from his unnatural stance.
Okie dokie then. Okay. Show on at weekend. Catterall Taylor. Who have you got?
Good fight. I'll break it down if you don't mind. I've got Catterall for me. When I look for a fight who's going to cause a major upset, I have to see form. I have to see previous indications that they can perform at world level. Now, for me, Catterall, and this is no disrespect to him, he's a very competent guy. He's a hardworking, dedicated guy. First of all, he's not really sailed through domestic level. That's the first indication for me that someone's world class. He beat Tyrone Nurse, but he had a close-ish fight with Tyrone Nurse, and then he had a debatable fight with O'Hara Davis. Now, both Tyrone Nurse will know well, and O'Hara Davis, they're domestic level. So he's someone for me who's first of all struggled to break through at domestic level. The second thing is, and again, I have to be careful because I have the utmost respect for Catterall and his team. I think it's a mystery how he's been mandated, if I'm being completely honest. I don't know how he's got that number one ranking. He hasn't really got anybody world class on his record. Probably the best guys on his record, unless I'm missing fighters, are the domestic level fighters we've just mentioned. Yeah. He's boxed three times in 3 years. So first of all, he's not the most active fighters. But why do I think the upset's unlikely? The reason I think it's unlikely is because, again, I look at his toolbox, and I don't look at what Josh Taylor can do. Josh Taylor can do everything. He's absolutely, technically, he's fucking brilliant. I look at Catterall. He's quite predictable. He drops his lead hand, but what he doesn't do when he's walking into the pocket like fighters do, like Taylor does. Taylor might drop his lead hand. As soon as he walks in, he closes up and he slips out underneath. He's really, really clever. Catterall comes out in a straight line every single time, and he has that front hand down, the right hand down. He's wide open for the shots. I think he's quite limited in his own arsenal. Touch jab, slam jab, backhand, looping left hand, might throw it to the body. He doesn't have a lot of like if you look at Josh Taylor, he's got the right hook, the southpaw left hook, the left uppercut, the right uppercut, the body work. He's got all these tools. Catterall is someone for me who's a good boxer. He has good rhythm, but he's quite predictable in terms of what he does. And I think what he's going to find at this elite level, and I've no reason to think that Taylor won't have taken this seriously. What he's going to find at elite level is everything he can do, Taylor can do, but he can do better. But he's also got other things in the toolbox. So I've not seen an indication that he can cause a major upset. I'd quite like it if he did, actually. I don't know why. I always like to see the underdog win, but I think he's short of world level. I've not seen that world class, thing above him, that world class halo above his head. And I think for me, the only question is, does Josh Taylor stop him or not? I wouldn't be surprised if it went 12 rounds, but I'm going to tentatively say Taylor between 7 and 10, breaks him down, sets a pace that Catterall can't match. The inactivity will hurt Catterall, as also been not boxing at that level. I think the body work will kill him, and I think Taylor will just nail him too many times, and they'll probably pull him out. But again, I hope Catterall performs and he's getting his opportunity. and hopefully he's getting a big payday, and good luck to him.
Well, my 50 quid on Catrol don't look good now, does it?
Hey, listen, Russell, I've been wrong so many times before. I'm being modest. I'm not that often wrong. What I think is like when I look at the great upsets in history. Yeah, try and break it down. So broke it down in terms of stylistically, but when I look at the great upsets in history, not all of them, but most of them, there's always that indication that someone can perform at world level. Like Buster Douglas, before he beat Tyson, he could be hot and cold. He could be a little bit lazy, but he'd beaten guys like, Oliver McCall, Trevor Berbick. So on his night, Buster Douglas was a good fighter, and he showed against Tony Tucker for the first 7-8 rounds. It was absolutely fantastic, and he ran out of gas. He was lazy, and he got stopped by Tucker. But even though no one expected him to beat Tyson, he'd shown indications that he could perform at world level. If I look at Lloyd Honeyghan against Don Curry, Lloyd Honeyghan, he cleaned up domestically. Unlike Jack Catterall, he breezed through the domestic level. He beat up Sylvester Mitti and everybody else. He knocked out Gianfranco Rossi to win a European title abroad, when a European title was absolutely something. Rossi went on to win a world title. He was a good fighter. He knocked out Rossi, and then he beat the WBA's top contender, Horace Shufford, in 8 rounds. And Horace Shufford was a really, really good fighter. So what I'm basically saying is, in those upsets, there've been an indication from Honeyghan and from Buster Douglas that they could hang at world level and they were capable of it. What I've not seen is that indication from Catterall that he can perform at world level. And that, for me, if he had the massive pedigree in the amateurs, I know he won the CYPs and he was a schoolboy finalist, but if he had that pedigree in the amateurs at world level, I think, well, there might be something there we can pull from to spring a surprise. But he's never shown me the pedigree and the variety to hang with Josh Taylor. And finally, what I'll think is, how is he going to beat him? You always try and break it down. So how is he going to beat him? Well, speed-wise, there's not much between them in terms of speed-wise. Josh Taylor works at a much higher rate. I think defensively he's better. He's got more experience. He's got a little bit more power. Catterall's got that 50% KO record. He's heavy hands, but he's not a big puncher as such. Yeah. I just can't see the tools. You can make a case for some upsets, whether they happen or not. I can't see he's got the tools and the activity and the experience and the pedigree to cause an upset. But look, this is boxing, isn't it? The reality is they're all 50-50 fights when the bell goes, and they don't always happen how we expect them to. And if they did, we wouldn't watch it, would we?
No, we won't.
We just stop watching it, mate. So your 50 quid might be a good bet, mate. But the reality is, Russell, you like a little wager. What's the point of you betting on Taylor?
Exactly. That's why I always go for better odds and just try it, because hope can happen, can't it?
Anything can happen. And if you bet on Taylor and Taylor wins, what are you going to get back on 50 quid? A fiver?
A fiver. 4 quid or something, 4.50 or something.
It's not worth it's not worth the petrol to the bookies, is it? It's not worth it.
No, I'm not going to wipe the smile off that bookie's face. I'm away a fiver profit.
Absolutely not, mate. And the thing is what I do like about what you're doing, and I sometimes go for the underdog as well, is it's dead easy for me to sit here and say I think Josh Taylor wins, and then if we do a Zoom next week and Josh Taylor's won, I'm not going to be giving it, oh, look at me, Jules, big shot predictor. I've only predicted what most people thought were going to happen. Whereas if you get it right, you've come from a different place, haven't you? You've taken a risk and you've rolled the dice.
I'm a dog.
So, I'm not going to give myself any credit for making that prediction, not whatsoever, none at all.
No. All right then. Well, listen, thanks for coming on, Julian.
Anytime, mate.
Had a good chat. Had nearly an hour. We've covered a few topics and had a good chat. I hope everybody's enjoyed it. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share it on WhatsApp and leave a comment below. I think that's about it.
Very quick one, and then I will absolutely very quick one. I've said this before, no bullshit. I hope people watching, commenting, try and be positive, because I don't think you've got any ideas how many hours Russell puts into this. You can see a couple of times he's been yawning this morning. I don't think it's because I'm that fucking boring. I think it's because he's up early. He's doing loads of interviews so you guys can watch. And if you think he's driving around in a Lamborghini based on what you get from YouTube, you got no idea at all. Comes from a good place. He does it for the love of boxing, the love of sport. Try and be kind. And as my mum used to say, if you've got nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all.
Oh God. Every now and then I do get an email, and you know what? I get that many emails that sometimes I let rip at the wrong people in my emails. You know what I mean? Because I get that much vileness.
You don't get email. You get hate mail, mate. It's
Bring 'em on!
okay. No, I'll tell you what. I'm gonna wish somebody was dead because they have a different point of view to me. Okay, no. Anyway,
don't worry about it. So I'm thick-skinned. Okay, no. Well, listen. You take care, Julian. Thanks for coming on.
Pal.
Peace out.
Thanks, mate. See you later.
Well, that was Julian from Dewsbury. He's a nice guy. Nice to have him on. He doesn't chat. He doesn't chat bullshit, Julian. He just tells it straight. I like to be like that. Sometimes I get things wrong. You can't always get things right. And if anybody's had an email reply off me recently and I've said F off, don't be offended by it. All right. It's just that we do get a lot of stuff. So, but keep them coming, because we won't be able to grow up channel, would we, without people having difference of opinions. So, all right. I think that's about it, really. I think there might be 3 videos to go out to. I don't know if I'm going to put them out Sunday. I don't know. We're going to see. Maybe I should just put them out today. But you should have a good Porky fix tonight, all you Porky followers, all you hardcores. Okie dokie. All right. Big shout out to Perry Howe. Perry the Promise. Howe. The Promise Army. Perry, what are you promising us? What? Tell me. Answers on a postcard. Porkycorner@mail.com. But okie dokie. But Perry, I don't know why you're on about fighting Dex Spellman, sorry. He puts you into orbit. So try and swerve Dex Spellman, because you'll end up hurt. So remember what I've said, Perry. Who's advising you to fight Dex Spellman? You are way, way, way off fighting him. All right. Just remember this video, Perry Howe, the promise. All right. Remember it. When you're talking like Scooby-Doo, remember I told you. All right. Go on. Peace out.